The Crypt interviews in association with Mayo Leisure Point Castle Bar.
You're listening to The Crypt, and my special guest on the show this week is Andy Palmer, the director of comedy horror The Funhouse Massacre, a movie I recently reviewed on the blog and I absolutely loved it. So I'm delighted to be chatting with you today, Andy.
Thank you for having me.
Well, before we talk about the movie, could you give us a bit of background about yourself?
Sure. So I always wanted to be in movies ever since I was a little kid. I started acting when I was a kid, and I grew up in a little town in Colorado, and so not anywhere near Hollywood. But there was a casting director that in the summer times would come out to work with do class workshops and stuff like that. Yeah. And so I always did her class, and then she would film us and audition us for movies. So like any fat kid movie of the 90s, like I auditioned for that role. So if you've seen, like, if there was a chubby kid in a movie in the 90s, like I auditioned for that. and so, yeah. And then when I got to college, I just became very enamored with production, and I'm always I'm kind of a equipment geek and stuff like that. And so I really got, fascinated with cameras, and this was really when digital was emerging and stuff like that. And so I just got swept up to that and moved to more behind the camera writing and directing and stuff like that. And, I started as an editor, and then I edited reality shows for about 10 years, always trying to get movies off the ground. And then finally got a little horror movie called Find Me off the ground about 4 years ago, and then have been lucky enough to get to make a movie every year since, and kind of get bigger and bigger. So that's kind of what brought me to the Funhouse Massacre.
Well, the Funhouse Massacre, it was written by Ben Begley. So how did you get involved with the project?
Sure. So Ben's wife was in the first movie I ever produced, the first feature I ever produced. And she's also in the movie, Renee Dorian. She plays Lori. And we had cast her in a movie called Awaken. Really loved her energy. And then Ben was the same way. And the moment I met Ben, like we shared the same brain, like our love of pop culture and our love of the same movies. And we have like an ongoing contest to see who can collect the most DVDs. And we're just very similar guys. So when he sent me the scripts, we had done a couple horror movies. He said, "Hey, I know you're doing horror movies. We just wrote this. Can you take a look at it?" And I read it in one sitting. And I called my producing partner, Warner Davis, and I said, "We must make this film. It's way bigger than anything we've ever done. I don't know how we'll do it, but I love this script so much." And so we had one guy that we felt, could bring that type of budget, which in the span of movies isn't huge, but for us was ginormous. And we sent it to him, and he flew down from San Francisco 2 days later and said, "I love this script. Let's do this thing." And we were like, "Oh my God, okay." So it was very serendipitous how it all came together.
Well, for those who haven't seen the trailer yet, could you give a little summary of the plot?
Sure. It takes place on Halloween night, and 6 of the world's worst serial killers that are kind of hidden away. They're serial killers that people whisper about, but they don't grab the headlines like a Dahmer or a Gacy or a Ted Bundy. And so they're kind of locked away in this asylum. And across town, there's this Halloween Funhouse being set up that is kind of in honor of all of them. And they get busted out of the asylum. They show up at their own themed funhouse, and they start running roughshod over all the people in there. The only problem is people in there think it's just part of the show until this kind of group of friends that work at a local diner show up and figure out that this is real. And they team up with a bumbling deputy and the sheriff to try to take the bad guys down.
Well, you say they're the bumbling deputy. He's played by Ben, who actually wrote the movie. He was hilarious in it. He was just so good. Ben makes me laugh more than anybody ever. It's really funny because we were just talking about this on another show the other day. That through kind of necessity, I never recommend that directors be their own editors. I've done it just kind of out of economic necessity. But that was one of the things. My first cut just included much more Ben, because he's so funny to me. And as people were watching it, they're like, "Listen, man, Ben's funny, but you don't need to hang on him quite so long. And so that was one of the things that I trimmed back, but it was definitely better for the story. But he is so funny. There's times on set I think there's one line in the movie that I think you can actually hear me laugh. Like it was so, like I was laughing so loud that the audio mixer caught it on the mic. And I think we just tried to bury it as much as possible because it was the best take, but guy makes me laugh more than anybody.
Oh, it's excellent. And then, of course, horror legend Robert Englund plays the warden at the start of the movie, introducing us to all of the psychopaths. You must have been over the moon to have such an icon involved in the movie. Was it easy getting him on board?
It was as easy as any deals are made in Hollywood. But he was interested right off the bat. And Robert doesn't do a whole lot of movies during the year. He's quite picky about the movies he does. And so I just thought the part was so good. We sent it to his agent. The agent was interested, and really what sealed the deal was we had been lucky enough to get Robert Kurtzman and the Creature Corps on board to do the makeup effects. And I was actually in Ohio at Kurtzman's shop when we were going through the script, and he pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, listen, Robert just called me about the movie, and he asked me if you guys know what you're doing and if this is going to be a good move." And Kurtzman just gave us our blessing. And we had just met him. I mean, literally just met him. But, I think... I hopefully came across like I knew what I was talking about. I knew what I wanted, and so he endorsed us, and then Robert signed that day. So it was a lot of it was due to Robert Kurtzman saying, "Hey, these guys, this is a good project. You should hop on this."
Excellent. And for those who don't know, Robert actually done the Freddy makeup as
he
well.
did. I mean, when you walk into his shop, it's like for a horror fan, a movie fan. I mean, it is like. It's like just walking into a church. I mean, every movie that he's worked on, from Dusk Till Dawn and Wishmaster and Nightmare on Elm Street, and I mean, we're talking everything. Yeah. And when it's funny because he's mostly a lot of people know him from K&B. So I always tell people that I'm like, well, Robert Kurtzman did our makeup, and they're like, "Oh, I know that name," and I'm like, "Yes, he's the K in K&B." And they're like, "Oh, got you." And so, he is just a super great guy, and his whole crew, David Greathouse and Becky Ingram were they did both, like, Becky did the beauty makeup and the effects makeup, and House, did a ton. He did the bulk of all the makeup and stuff like that, and they were just incredible.
Fantastic. It was great. It's great to see practical special effects. I always say that in every interview I do. People are probably sick of hearing me say that now.
Yeah, it's funny because it was right when I read it, I was like, I don't want to do anything digitally. And it's a lot of prep, but I don't think it's cost, like it's really cost prohibitive either way. I think that if you plan properly and you do things that are relatively easy to kind of set up and stuff like that. Some of our stuff was not easy to set up, but a lot of it was. You'd be amazed at how easy it was to kind of knock these gags out and stuff like that. It looks so much better, and it really it doesn't cost that much more. It's a little bit more work, but it doesn't cost that much more. And but it makes all the difference. I think
it is. It's a great payoff, and there were some great, brilliant kills in it.
Thank you. Yeah, we were. It was funny because when we were kind of bringing the story together, and I really had to kind of decide. I think as horror comedy is a tough one to go with, and the horror comedies that I've always really, really enjoyed were more comedy and gag oriented rather than scary. Because I think scary and funny is a really tough thing to pull off. There's a couple movies that have done it. I think Nightmare on Elm Street series. There's some really scary, really suspenseful moments in that series, but also really funny moments. But they're more like one-liners, Yeah. And for us, this movie was just very comedic. And so I said, all right, we're going to we'll make some creepy scenes and stuff like that, but let's really focus on the comedy gags and the gore gags. And I think that those two go hand in hand, and there's a lot of gore, but it's very tongue-in-cheek, and I kind of, when we sat down with Kurtzman, I said, what I want the audience to do is go, "Oh," instead of like, "Oh." Like, I didn't want him to be like, I didn't want him to be sick. I just wanted him to be like, "Oh my God, did they just do that?"
And you pulled that off perfectly.
Cool.
Then the other thing is, what was the process like now of casting the movie? Because you got such a likeable cast.
Yeah. We had a casting director named Emily Schweber who kind of traditionally does more. We talked to so many different casting directors, and Emily did traditionally more kind of like Sundance movies and stuff like that. But she got the script, and she brought in these amazing folks. And I'm a big pop culture guy. I'm a huge beyond any filmmaker. I'm a movie fan. And so like when Courtney Gaines walked in, he actually originally came in for the Warden when Robert wasn't on board. We were, and we were kind of covering the bases with different actors to come in and read for the Warden. And the moment he walked in, I was like, I'm putting Courtney Gaines in this movie. He's going in this film. We'll just, if Robert comes on board for the Warden, then we'll figure out another part for him. And he was so game about it. He came in a couple days later and read for Dennis, the park owner, and he just knocked it out. And then Clint's manager had reached out to us, Clint Howard, and it was the same thing. Like I said, if we can get him, because he's just such a, they're all kind of legends in their own right, but I just knew that I knew Clint would just knock the taxidermist out, and stuff like that. So yeah, Emily did an amazing job. She brought us Mars Crane, who plays Rocco, who's just, he was so great. And it was a super great experience working with her.
Well, I think Funhouse Massacre is definitely going to be one of those movies that every horror fan has in their collection, and it's the prime example why indie horror is where it's at right now. In terms of originality compared to mainstream.
Yeah, it's funny because when we wrapped up the movie and we started taking it out, we started taking it out to bigger companies, some studios and stuff like that. And it was amazing how the reaction was so like, oh, we don't really deal, like, not without even watching the film. They're like, we don't really deal with horror comedies, and just kind of shut right out of the gate. I think traditionally horror comedies either do extremely well or they don't do very well at all. There's not that middle ground, and I think the bigger companies in the studios, they want that middle ground.
Yeah.
They wanted that kind of middle ground feeling guaranteed. And so we kind of took a step back. We're going to premiere Horror Hound, and then we won Horror Hound, and I said, you know what? This is where we need to go. Like, let's not deal with the middle ground guys. Let's go to the people that appreciate this. Mm-hmm. And so our first call was to Scream Factory, and we sent it to them, and they loved it. And I was like, this is the perfect home, because everybody that loves Scream Factory movies is going like, this is their movie, their movie, and they've been awesome to work with. Yeah, I'm really grateful that we kind of were able to actually step back and find somebody that loved the film as much as we did.
And when will it be available in Ireland?
That's a good question. So Spotlight Pictures is handling our foreign distribution, and I know that we have sold Ireland. So I know it will be soon, but I will find that out, and I will email you so you can let everybody know. Yeah, and I have, speaking of Ireland, I just found out that the film I did before Funhouse, which is a little like fun Twilight Zone thriller called Badlands of Cain, is going to be on iTunes in Ireland and at the end of May. So we'll have a presence in Ireland pretty soon, no matter what. But yeah, Funhouse will be arriving there shortly for sure.
Excellent. Well, I've told so many people about it now. There's loads dying to see it, so
we'll get it out there for sure.
Excellent. You mentioned Badlands of Cain there. So can you tell us a bit about that movie?
Sure. So Badlands, I actually filmed before Funhouse, the summer before Funhouse. But it was a much smaller budget. We kind of finished it all on, all out of our pockets to kind of get it done and stuff like that. And so it's just starting to make its way out. It just came out in the States April 1st. And it's a fun little thriller. My friend Rochelle DeMaria, she wrote and stars in it, and she had been in our first film, Find Me, as well. And it's just my love letter to Hitchcock and the Twilight Zone. It's about two girls on a cross country road trip. Car breaks down in Arizona. They get towed into this tiny town, and they basically can't leave. So every effort they make to leave, they can't, and they kind of get wrapped up in the town and the people and this creepy creepy guy that kind of runs the town named Terry, who's played by Paul Soter from the Broken Lizard troupe. So he did Super Troopers and Club Dread and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's a total turn for Paul. He's super creepy. He just knocked it out of the park. I'm really excited for people to kind of see a different side of Paul.
Oh, excellent. I'm looking forward to seeing that one. And have you any other projects that you'd like to give a mention to?
We are just developing stuff right now. The great thing that we're kind of moving into as we've navigated, indie horror and suspense for the last couple of years is Petrie Entertainment, the company that Warner and I own. We're expanding into distribution. And so we're starting to talk to filmmakers like us and start, trying to get their films out there as well and kind of navigate the waters and stuff that we had to find out the hard way that we're going to hopefully help them get away from. So I'm lining up a few projects directing wise, but in the meantime, we're really committed to finding gems, horror gems, and trying to get them out into the world as well. And so I think in the next year, you're going to see not only stuff that we produce originally, but also stuff that we find that's going to be really exciting and really fun.
Excellent. Do you know, there's actually a guy over here in Ireland, he's doing brilliantly at the minute. He's making a lot of short movies. He's called Paddy Murphy. And he is excellent. You should look him up on YouTube.
I will definitely look him up.
He's something else. He's, real original, and the suspense and everything. And for a short movie, it's hard.
Oh, for sure, for sure. It's
good.
It's such a different world now because you always start kind of with shorts and you work your way. And now I'm kind of the mind. It's like the shorts are few and far between. Some people can make like these kind of big budget shorts to get noticed, but nowadays it's like it's so accessible. You're just like if you have if you have a couple grand and a camera, just go make a feature.
That's it.
Because there's so many more avenues and stuff like that. But that kind of I'd love to see his stuff because that's the kind of talent we want to develop. We really want to make like a modern day United Artists when it was formed by Charlie Chaplin and that crew, where it was like a really kind of like a studio that's run by the artists, where we can share our different audience and our fans and stuff like that, and that we don't put out a ton of movies, but once a month or something like that, people go, ooh, the new Petrie movie's coming out. It's going to be super, super solid, and that's what we're looking to do. So I'll look him up for sure because that's who we're looking for.
Yeah, he's a great storyteller. A great storyteller.
I love that. Love that.
Well, where can people follow you guys online?
Sure. You can go to our website, petrieentertainment.com, or I'm on Twitter at PetrieAndy, PETRI. ANDY, and then our Facebook, facebook.com/Funhouse Massacre, and we will keep everybody up to date on everything.
Excellent, that's fantastic. Well, Andy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am I had mentioned to you off the air, but I was just in Ireland and absolutely fell in love. So hopefully the next interview we'll just do it in person and call it a day.
That'd be excellent. Thanks so much, Andy.
All right, thank you so much.
The Crypt interviews in association with Mayo Leisure Point Castle Bar.